Wells was a Black civil rights activist and feminist. Our project talks about her and her anti-lynching campaign. In the late 1890s, she wrote a document. It was stating the sad and tragic practice of lynching/hanging Black people. Of course, she got hate as well as backlash. She became very interested in this topic after an incident she heard about 3 working men she kept close in contact with were attacked by a white mob/horde outside of Tennessee. At one point, she was very familiar with death/harmful threats. This horrible action of lynching had become very popular in southern parts of the Civil War. She started documenting the lynchings and started speaking out and having important speeches surrounding her passion for the anti-lynching campaign.
Ida B. Wells was an African-American journalist, editor, suffragist, sociologist, feminist, and early leader in the civil rights movement who helped establish the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which is known as the NAACP. In 1909, Ida B. Wells strongly believed that all women should stay united and was an outspoken opponent of Frances Willard and the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which is known as the WCTU, whom she believed turned a blind eye to the rights of African Americans and ignored the lynchings throughout the South. We know Ida B. Wells was not only an activist for African American rights, but she was also a women's rights activist. She created the Ida B. Wells Women's Club, and she was a huge part for women's suffrage. Also, she openly confronted white women in the suffrage movement who ignored lynching. She fought tirelessly for the right of all women to vote. Despite facing racism within the suffrage movement, on August 18, 1920, Congress ratified the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, giving women the right to vote. This shows how Ida B. Wells was fighting for racism and sexism. The NAACP organization and Anti-Lynching Campaign had a big effect on society and allies of African Americans. Our topic is Ida B. Wells and her impact on society with her campaign. She started to document the lynching in the South and became very angered about it. So she decided to do something. She traveled to England in 1893 throughout 1894 and spoke at meetings about the effects of lynching in the South. Even when she got back home, she was attacked. A Texas newspaper called her a quote-unquote adventuress, and the governor of Georgia even called her a fake for businesswomen trying to boycott the South and do business in the West. In 1894, she came back to America and went on a speech tour. She had then been sent a letter from the famous Frederick Douglass, an invitation to be part of his movement, his idea, his organization. This then started her journey. Ida B. Wells was also a journalist and a co-founder of the NAACP and good advocate for equal rights and against lynching. From 1884 to 1891, she taught at segregated schools in Memphis, Tennessee, and was a very powerful activist in what she believed in.
We know Ida B. Wells was an important writer because she had over 40 plus books made about uncovering the truth about lynching and African American rights.
Ida B. Wells was significant in history because she played an important role in the NAACP by writing articles in newspapers about lynching, discrimination, and segregation. This matters because Ida's impact can inspire others in present time to make a change, to fight for injustice, and not give up. This topic is important because Ida B. Wells set an example for people today to fight for what is right. A historical meaning or importance we can find is that Ida B. Wells was an activist fighting for equal rights for all races. She was one of many activists to do something about racial discrimination. Another historical meaning we can learn from Ida B. Wells is that change does not come without a sacrifice and does not happen quickly. The way our topic is significant in history is because Ida B. Wells has done a lot for African American people. First, she made the first black kindergarten in 1897. She was one of the founders of the NAACP and believed all people should be equal. She was a huge part of black freedom. Without her or other black activists, we probably wouldn't have a piece of normalcy for black people like we have now. Another important role she played was leading an anti-lynching crusade in the U.S. She found and became integral in groups striving for African American justice.
Overall, Ida B. Wells is a great African American woman. We feel that she doesn't get recognized a lot, and she deserves more credit for what she has done. For example, in this project, we have talked about how she made the first black kindergarten. Then we talked about how she was the first black woman alderman in Chicago. We also talked about how she was a woman activist and believed in women's rights. Also, she brought her anti-lynching campaign to the White House in 1898 and called for President McKinley to make reforms. Last but not least, we talk about how she worked for a black newspaper. Ida B. Wells even had a street named after her in Chicago, and people debated about it. All because of these great things she did, we believe Ida B. Wells deserves more attention and credit for all the wonderful things she has done.